Tupac Shakur, the poet-rebel whose verses turned streets into stadiums, still echoing today. Norm Macdonald, the deadpan comic who turned truth into a punchline, reminding us humor can cut deeper than knives. Burt Bacharach, the melodic architect whose timeless chords built a soundtrack that still frames our moments. Betty White, the ageless actress who proved that wit and warmth can survive any era. Sidney Poitier, the pioneering star who shattered Hollywood's color barriers with quiet, relentless dignity. Whitney Houston, the vocal titan whose soaring voice lifted millions beyond the limits of ordinary song. The world first met Donald Trump, not as a politician, but as a brand, a larger-than-life figure who turned New York skylines into his personal billboard. The image that flooded television screens, social feeds, and campaign rallies was that of a decisive, unapologetic winner who could summon a crowd with a single phrase. "Make America Great Again" became a mantra, and his signature hand gesture a visual shorthand for confidence, controversy, and relentless ambition. Yet beneath that glossy veneer lay a relentless engine of discipline, pressure, and sacrifice that few outside his inner circle ever witnessed. From the moment he stepped into his father's real estate office in the early 1970s, Trump learned that success demanded more than bold declarations. He inherited a portfolio of middle-class apartments in Queens and Brooklyn, but his vision stretched far beyond the boroughs. The pursuit of a Manhattan skyline presence meant sleepless nights, poring over zoning maps, relentless negotiations with city officials, and a willingness to gamble on projects that could either cement his reputation or plunge him into debt. The construction of Trump Tower in 1983 illustrated that gamble, a glass-clad monument that turned the Trump name into a global trademark, but also required a cascade of loans, legal maneuvers, and personal guarantees that would later surface in courtrooms. The public saw a billionaire who never missed a headline, yet the private reality was a ledger of risk. By the early 1990s, 3 of his Atlantic City casino ventures, Trump Plaza, Trump Taj Mahal, and Trump Castle, staggered under the weight of a national recession. Banks called in loans, creditors lined up, and Trump was forced to negotiate with lenders, surrender equity, and ultimately file for corporate bankruptcy not once, but 3 times in a decade. Those filings were not signs of failure. They were strategic resets that kept the brand alive. But they also meant personal stress, sleepless weekends, and a constant battle to protect his family's financial future. When The Apprentice debuted in 2004, it did more than showcase a charismatic host. It turned his business persona into a cultural touchstone. The crisp boardroom, the catchphrase, "You're fired," and the televised display of power amplified the myth of the decisive mogul. Behind the cameras, however, Trump was navigating a grueling production schedule that demanded daily rehearsals, script revisions, and a relentless media rhythm. The show's success cemented his reputation as a television star, but it also eroded the boundary between his personal life and his public performance. Every off-camera conversation became fodder for tabloids, and the pressure to maintain a flawless on-screen persona intensified. In June 2015, the transition from boardroom to ballot box seemed inevitable. The announcement video, Trump standing before a sea of American flags, captured a moment of theatrical drama that mirrored his earlier media exploits. The public image that emerged was that of an outsider, a businessman who would drain the swamp. Yet the reality of his campaign was a masterclass in political engineering. A 24-hour news cycle, a flood of rallies, and an unprecedented use of social media to bypass traditional gatekeepers. The constant tweeting, the nightly rallies, the relentless interviews, all required a stamina that rivaled any marathon. Behind the scenes, staffers worked around the clock, and Trump's own schedule was a regimented march of breakfasts, press briefings, and late-night calls that left little room for personal reprieve. The contradictions of his presidency amplified the tension between image and cost. He projected an image of unfiltered honesty, yet his administration was riddled with staff turnovers, legal battles, and policy vacillations. The tax reforms, the immigration orders, the diplomatic overtures, each decision was accompanied by a cascade of legal challenges, investigations, and intense scrutiny. The public saw bold moves. The private reality was a constant negotiation with the Department of Justice, congressional committees, and a litany of civil lawsuits that threatened both his political capital and his personal wealth. Family dynamics added another layer of private pressure. His children, Donald Jr., Eric, Ivanka, and Tiffany, became integral to both his business empire and his political brand. Their involvement meant family dinners turned into strategic meetings, and personal milestones were broadcast to a nation that dissected every word. The expectation to uphold the Trump brand placed a unique burden on each sibling, intertwining their personal ambitions with a public narrative they could not escape. Health, too, entered the public-private divide. In October 2020, Trump announced he had contracted COVID-19, a revelation that sparked a media frenzy. The hospitalization, the treatment regimen, and the subsequent recovery were documented in real time, turning a personal health crisis into a national spectacle. The episode underscored the constant surveillance he lives under, where even a fever becomes a headline, and the need to project resilience becomes a political calculation. Post-presidency, the cost of the image has only intensified. Multiple investigations, ranging from the Georgia election interference probe to the New York civil fraud trial, have forced him to allocate millions of dollars to legal defenses. The financial strain of legal fees, the potential for asset seizures, and the looming prospect of indictment create a pressure cooker environment that few outsiders can fathom. Yet the public narrative continues to spotlight his rallies, his speeches, and his social media proclamations, often glossing over the toll exacted by endless courtroom battles. Even his social media strategy reflects the dichotomy. After being permanently suspended from Twitter in early 2021, he launched Truth Social, a platform designed to echo his brand of unfiltered communication. The move was both a statement of defiance and a logistical undertaking, building a tech infrastructure, hiring developers, and navigating regulatory scrutiny, all while maintaining the illusion of an unimpeded voice. Throughout his career, Trump has cultivated a persona that thrives on contradiction. A billionaire who declares bankruptcy, a politician who claims outsider status while wielding institutional power, a media star who despises the press yet relies on it. This paradoxical dance is the core of his public image. At the private cost is a relentless schedule, legal exposure, familial expectations, and a personal brand that must constantly reinvent itself to survive. The story of Donald Trump is not one of a static monument, but of an evolving figure who balances the glare of the spotlight with the weight of hidden burdens. He remains a living participant in the cultural conversation, shaping policies, influencing elections, and redefining what it means to be a public figure in the digital age. The tension between the polished facade and the underlying pressures offers a glimpse into a life where every triumph is measured against a backdrop of sacrifice, and where the next chapter is always waiting to be written. As the nation watches his next move, whether a campaign rally, a courtroom appearance, or a new business venture, the same question persists. How much of the man behind the marquee will remain concealed, and how much will finally emerge from the shadows of his own making? The answer, like the man himself, will likely be as complex and contested as the image he has spent a lifetime constructing.